So welcome to part 2 of our message series. It's called Just Let Go. I think at St. Norbert's, we have always tried to make our homilies relevant so that they're touching something that's in real life and connecting them back to God and Scripture. But in an attempt to do that even more, we've decided to do this thing that's called a message series. So we're taking specific topics and working with these topics over 5 to 6 weeks. And so it's sort of like a soap opera that you get bits and pieces. And if you haven't been here, there's a little bit of a recap and leave you a little bit hanging for next week. So you might remember that last week there was this sense of inviting all of us to just let go of certain things that keep us stuck. That all of us have trouble letting go of certain things. I'll give some examples, and maybe one or all of them might connect to something that you struggle with in terms of trying to just let it go. Do you know people, or you might be the kind of person that needs to be the best at something? I see people turning heads and looking at others. It's hard not to let that go, that need to be the best. Or maybe you struggle with having to look all together before you leave the house. Again, I see some faces. There are others, though, who struggle with having to have the best new thing, the new car, the new video game, new shoes. Or others who have this desire to be special, to be recognized. And it seems so simple, but these are things that it's hard to let go of, especially when we get stuck in our ways. So the premise is that each of us has something that we're holding on to that in fact not only gets in our relationship, in the way of our relationship with God, but it gets in the way of our relationship with ourselves. And the whole point of this series is to acknowledge that by just letting go a little bit, our relationship with God will improve. And so that's the basis of the message series. And tonight, I'd like to invite us to dive into this sense of just letting go of our understanding of greatness, of success, and power. Essentially, we think that greatness and success comes from getting out of life what we want, when we want it, how we want it. So, there are some people who look at life and in order to measure success, they have to be happy. So if you're that kind of person, maybe the analogy is life is like a party, and you are always in the middle of the party celebrating. That's the measure to success and happiness. On the other hand, you might be the kind of person that wants to be left alone. And if you can do things your way without having anybody else interfere, that's your notion of being successful. There are others still, and maybe you know some like this, who exercise power and authority in such a way that it literally pushes people aside. This is the kind of person that's concerned with getting things done at all cost. And if you do that, you're successful. And of course, some of us measure success by fame. Are we recognized? Are we admired? And that's where success is measured. But I think for most of us, it's more modest than those. It's really about living a comfortable life in Paoli, where the house, the kids, the schools, the cars, the sports teams are what's important. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these measures to success. I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to explain that there are different ways for different people to measure success, happiness, and power. And I'm sure you can find in some of these ways the ways you measure and accept power. But if you don't take anything away tonight, this is the main message: that our understanding of power and greatness is so different than God's understanding of power and greatness. And I think Mark in the gospel tonight helps us to see clearly what that difference is. So James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come to Jesus and they say to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us what we ask of you." How bold. Isn't it bold? And their timing could not have been worse. Do you remember what happens right before James and John go to Jesus? Jesus, has literally explained to the disciples that he is about to suffer, accept the cross, and die. For James and John, that went in this ear and out the other. And all they could focus on was this nagging of Jesus to get what they want. They completely ignored the message and asked for this favor. You know, the earliest disciples of Jesus went to Jesus and followed him because they were looking for something from him. It's not much different than us, I think. That in many ways, we are attracted to Jesus just like the first disciples because we see in Jesus the potential to change and to be transformed. And so Jesus is not in the least surprised when James and John say to him, "Grant that in your glory we may sit one at your right hand and the other at your left." You see, James and John thought that Jesus was going to be a king. That's what it means when you enter your glory. And they say to him, "When you become king, promise us that you'll make us your two most important lieutenants." And can you imagine with me Jesus sort of smiling? Because their request is so different than what was going on in his heart and in his mind. "You do not know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" What does that mean? In Scripture, whenever the word cup is used, it's a metaphor. It literally means, can you accept the plan that God has in store for you? And for Jesus, that cup was suffering, the cross, death. And to be baptized, the word baptized literally means to be dunked, immersed. And so Jesus is saying to them, can you handle the pain and suffering that you're asking for? And again, they're clueless. We can. Little did they know that this is probably the best example of being careful what you ask for. The other disciples, they become indignant. Do you know why? James and John really enjoyed a special relationship with Jesus. In other words, Jesus favored the two of them. And so already the 10 were jealous. Imagine that. Even the disciples struggled with rivalry and jealous feelings. And so this puts them over the edge. And Jesus calls them together. And he says, you know what it's like for the other rulers who lord it over people. It can't be this way with you. Power and authority in Jesus' day meant that you could tell people what to do and you didn't need to do anything. And that's what the disciples wanted. They wanted to share in that power. But Jesus will have none of that. My kingdom is different. In his kingdom, the exercise of power and authority meant service. If you are to be great, if you are to be powerful, you will become the servant of all. Did you notice that Jesus doesn't say, don't strive to be great? Or don't try to be powerful? Jesus wants all of us to be great and to be powerful. But it's not our understanding of greatness and power. He doesn't criticize them. He just tries to refocus them. And so the takeaway tonight is that God's understanding of power and greatness and success comes through service. Look at Jesus' life. You have been around long enough that you've heard me say over and over again that I need you to be involved and to serve in the parish. The lyrics are not going to appear on their own. The hospitality that you enjoy after Mass doesn't just show up. There's no genie to clean up after. The sound needs a person. We need lectors. There are casseroles that need to be made for Bethesda. But I've realized I've been doing this wrong. I don't want you to do this for me. It's really Jesus who's asking you to serve. And this is the point where heads go down because they don't want to make eye contact with me. But I'm telling you that one of the only things that Jesus asks of us is that we grow in our relationship with him, to become more in love with him. It happens by becoming a more faith-filled disciple. Can I challenge you this week? First of all, just try to change. Just let go of your personal understanding of success and greatness. And maybe allow Jesus to speak to you in your heart, calling you to serve like him. Yes, it's simple, but it's not easy. He's asking you to put yourself aside. That's what makes it so difficult. It's not about you or me. It's about doing for him. Week 3 takes this notion of service and calls us forth to make Jesus known by just letting go of the things that we hold on to. What will you let go of this week so that you might be a more faith-filled disciple of Jesus?